Hello. Hello everyone. First of all, happy Pride Month. We're very honored today to host the second conversation at Except for Europe dedicated to Pride Month. Last year, we discussed about sexuality and how to portray that in immersive media. Today, we're focusing on some delicate themes like sexuality, queer representation, consent, safety for spectatorship in immersive projects. This panel brings together talented creators that I truly admire, who have been and are reimagining how we engage with intimacy and sexuality in creative immersive media. These are all people I have the pleasure of meeting across European festivals. Some of them I had the chance to work with as well while working at several festivals. And it's a joy to have them here today. Let me introduce them to you. One is Louis Avalos, creator of QueerUtopia Act 1 Cruising. Mads Damsbo, director of Darkrooms, Chao Tung-yen, creator of Trilogy of the Mist, and Agnese Pietrobon, journalist at XR Must. I would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves and their projects briefly. Let's start with Louis Avalos.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here. So I'm an XR director. My project is called QueerUtopia Act 1 Cruising. It's a virtual reality narrative that tells the story about this retired playwright that is losing his memories. So it's a journey through the phenomenon of cruising, of reconstructing and keeping memories and queer memory.
Mads, can you introduce Darkrooms and yourself as well?
Sure. I'm a long-time producer, director of immersive experiences, and this is sort of my first full-scale spatial immersive documentary where we visit 4 different people and their different paths through dark rooms that have transformed them in various ways. And the audience are invited to visit these virtual safe spaces, as we call them, where they will be challenged on their own boundaries and they will give consent to go as deep as they want to go in the dark rooms.
Nice. And Yen, can you introduce the Trilogy of the Mist?
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Yen. I'm very honored to be here. And Trilogy of the Mist actually consists of 3 works. The first one is called In the Mist, which I made in 2020, and then it went to Venice in 21. And then I got invited to kind of elaborate it into a theater performance that 20 people were walking around in the theater space and then using the pass-through function. Then with the time and technology continue, I start to see more and more 6 or 3 rooming work. I start to imagine, and my audience has been, asking or trying to touch things in the first VR film. So I start to wonder, what if I can make a maze or a virtual gate sauna for them to explore, and then actually have a body, and that becomes Traversing the Mist, which is the final part of the trilogy. Yeah. I have a 1-minute trailer of all the trilogy I would like to share.
Yeah,
So
I'll put it.
So that's what I've been doing over the past 4 years, and thank you.
Okay, and Agnese, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi everyone, I'm Agnese. I'm not a creator of experiences. I write for XR Master. It's a website magazine dedicated to new media storytelling and immersive storytelling in general. I'm super glad to be here, and thank you for Federico, for the invitation.
Actually, this talk started because we were chatting about darkrooms while at CPH Doc. So thank you for inspiring this panel, Agnese. You needed to be here because I mean
Yeah.
it's because of you and talking about darkrooms that we.
It was a very intense discussion. It's true.
And we're going to talk about it right now with everyone involved now, with the creator themselves. So QueerUtopia, Trilogy of the Mist, and Darkrooms are all immersive experiences that centrally focus on queer spaces, particularly darkrooms. The three of them, they all talk about that. So as mentioned by the artist, your work challenges to rethink how we portray intimacy. And today we're going to explore how we navigate consent in XR and how audiences can participate in or witness the stories, and what's the difference between participating and witnessing these stories. So, how do projects like QueerUtopia, Trilogy of the Mist, and Darkrooms reimagine or reclaim? In case some of you maybe you reclaim the space, some of you they reimagine the space, like the Darkrooms. So I would like to start actually with Yen, because I would say that you are reimagining the dark rooms with your projects more than reclaiming them.
I think I would say that it was also like a curiosity of me of what should be done in VR in the very first place. Like I want it to be visceral. I want to feel it, because I don't really believe in like 100% immersion, and but being able to step into somewhere I didn't know is just purely amazing. And when I make the work, it's not so much about introducing this kind of space to the general public or something. It was more like sharing a kind of feeling, a kind of sentiment that I cannot quite understand, and I want to capture that in. So and later on, people start to ask me, won't you sort of afraid that this film will be kind of echoing the stigma that, you know, gay people doing this and that, it will be bring more shame or something. But I but I but I think I was prepared, or I wouldn't say I'm not scared. I feel actually I'm the most nervous one while we are filming it, and I'm very aware of how privileged I am to make the work in Taiwan, and then actually to be founded and to film the work on the National Taichung Theater, and but honestly, I feel so nervous filming it, but then with the support of the team, I feel it's okay. And then I start to share with people, and yeah, I think I think that's how I never really want to say like reimagine or reclaim or something, but more like they are part of a queer experience that is sort of untold or hidden in now, especially I think during 2020 or during the marriage equality talk, that somehow the love or everything's equalized, which is a bit dangerous. Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Like because on certain level, people need to know that love is love. And on certain level, when you equalize everyone's love, and then when you want to make that a standard, and then when I mean nowadays, we see all the corporates are not sponsoring Pride. We are mad about that. But when when all the corporates are sponsoring, they are sponsoring the version of queer love they want to sponsor, like you know, monogamy, one-on-one, have a dog, have a maybe a baby, maybe not a baby, maybe that's a taboo. And so while making it, I'm not so rebellious trying to be so political about it, but after I made it, I think it's just very nice to make work that is not about pure romantic love. And I was really interested in how stranger have intimacy and have trust or being vulnerable with each other in a sexual situation or non-sexual even. I mean, yeah, this can go on forever, but I think a lot of time, when you go to a gay bathhouse, this kind of space, I think there are percentage that you want to, quench the desire, but there are also a very large percentage that you are actually trying to feeling the void. Yeah, and I think that's what I want to share.
QueerUtopia, I think it's very different instead, because there is some kind of politics involved, and also I would say it's more reclaiming them. Would you agree?
Yes, I think it's a mix of reclaiming. I think it's reclaiming through reimagining in a
Yeah.
way. Because I think this script of QueerUtopia, it's based on interviews of over 60-year-old queer men about cruising. So we just use those interviews to somehow create this character that is like a personification of all of this. And since he's a retired playwright, everything's very performative. So we talk about the phenomenon of cruising, but through this more like performative lenses. But at the same time, I think when doing the piece, the process of doing the piece, this somehow reclaiming was very important because it all started as an investigation of the phenomenon of cruising through virtual reality and through the space. It was inspired by the photographers of Alvin Baltrop. I'm not sure if you guys ever saw his pictures. It's very powerful. Is this African-American photographer that used to do photographs during the 70s and 80s in this the rivers by the margins of the Hudson River in New York. And the pictures themselves, they're very homoerotic in a way, but at the same time, through the architecture and how they're made, you somehow can grasp the cracks in society of oppression, all of that. And when I saw those pictures and I understood I wanted to do something about this, it was very difficult to convince people. And in this XR environment, most people are non-queer. So for me, it was very difficult to somehow prove my point when it comes to this project, because the phenomenon of cruising, when we think about, I don't know, politically wise, structure wise, architecture wise, is very complex. And convincing people that this was something valid to talk about was very hard. So I understood that I had to do something that in a way would, as much as I hate the empathy machine that people talk about in VR, I mean, I don't totally agree with that. But there's a level of it, of making, like using the phenomenon of cruising as a means to talk about something else, about queer memory, about belonging, about this almost erased queer generation and the struggles they have been through. And the aspect of the sexuality in the space and reclaiming these spaces and somehow reimagining those spaces, it was very important to me too.
And Mads, your project instead has not premiered. The fully realized version is still a prototype, but can you talk about, because you're working a lot with characters instead and like avatars and the story and the background story of each character. So could you introduce why you chose the darkroom place for your project? And
yeah, I was just gonna jump here so I can talk from this. Can you see the picture I'm showing here or the video?
No, can you try and click the button present below?
I got it.
Okay, now we have it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. So I think what's different from our project and from the other projects that just was presented is that we took a very documentarian approach through a co-creation process. So the whole project came from a need to sort of from own experience walking through dark rooms, and from having a lot of friends and near people in my life that have had transformative experiences, I knew the power of dark rooms. But as a white cis male myself, and like not necessarily a queer person, I mean, I'm queer in some sense, but I think you know what I mean, is that I really wanted to use the skills that I had as an immersive director to actually help someone else tell their story in the experience, or in dark rooms. And so what we did was we casted very widely through Berlin and Denmark and Taiwan. And we got a lot of great submissions of people whose lives have been changed through different ways, but through dark rooms. And from that, we did master interviews. And these master interviews were actually then, we imagined from those interviews what these worlds might look like that the audience would go through. And then through workshops with the participants, we would flesh that out in a very like physical, tangible way. Interacted, played puppies, tried like different domination tactics, sub tactics, like tried different things, mechanics that were all part of the dark room experience, but also could then translate into the virtual reality experience for the audience. So it's kind of like this weird, not weird, but it's a very very fine line between a very, very clear story told by someone, but also a very, very fantastic universe that allows you to immerse in a way that you couldn't do in real life, but can let you embody this story in a very unique way for the audience. So that's how we approached it, and so this is not like any dark room you've ever seen. It's a lot more also a psychological dark room about the spaces in our mind that we might not want to go to. And so we have the freedom in the experience to sort of, which I also think was beautiful in traversing the mist, is like the freedom to sort of tell more of an emotional or psychological state or sentiment that you can step through, that sort of underpins the actual story that's being told from the participants. So yeah, that's more the structure that we worked on.
Nice. So let's go to the second question. And this actually applies to everyone. So whoever would like to go first, please go. The question is, do you think XR can be used as a form of sexual education or exploration, especially for queer individuals who may lack safe spaces offline where they are from?
Federico, if I can comment on something quicker
Absolutely.
before it's actually connected to this.
Okay.
But you mentioned the concept of empathy, and I was reflecting on it a little bit because we all know that VR, empathy, they always went hand in hand. And I realized, even reflecting on the topic of today, that sometimes when you watch a certain situation, you understand the parts of the community, you understand the issue they're talking about, but sometimes you lack the direct connection with the person, not taking not walking in their shoes, but just connecting with the person, understanding their motivations. And I think that what's interesting about all these works, but in general, or works that talk about gender, sexuality, and other issues connected to identity, is the fact that they connect you to a person, not just to a community, but to someone that you can finally understand why they're doing the things they're doing that maybe are different from the things that you are doing. So in this way, I think that this kind of experience can actually be partially educational, not just on learning something about the situation, but on learning about people. And this is what I like. But in regards to your question, Federico, well, psychology and XR are super, super, super connected. Like we have used XR to elicit certain emotions, to help with fears, to help with anxiety. There's like a a lot of research in Italy about body image disorders and how to work with XR to help people who suffers from it. And I was actually discussing it with a colleague of yours, Cameron Kostopoulos,
Yeah.
I hope that's the right pronunciation, that was mentioning to me how we use in Body of Mine a lot of reflection on the Proteus effect, I think it's called. The idea that when you are in a virtual environment and there's an avatar that you're playing, you start to act like that avatar. And connected to the idea of virtual body swapping, I know there was a lot of research on that. I am in the avatar of Albert Einstein and I suddenly score better at math problems, or I'm wearing like an avatar that has a darker skin. And even in a session of 10 minutes and just one session, my racial prejudices are lowered. So all these elements, I think, can actually show very concretely that sexual education, exploration of identity can be done very well in XR. And in fact, talking with Cameron, he was mentioning to me that after the LBE experience at the Venice Immersive, he was talking with the people, and a lot of them gave a very positive feedback about not just the experience, but the way they were feeling their bodies, the way they were feeling about themselves. So I think that this shows that there are incredible ways in which XR can be used to get to know yourself and get to know others. And with the plus that you kind of make your own journey at your own pace, discovering yourself in the way that you want to discover yourself somehow. So that's positive to me. Sorry for rambling, guys. Okay.
Anyone wants to react here?
I mean, I think for us it's interesting to discuss the educational part, but actually the way we thought about it was more as a funnel for a general audience to be acquainted with the fundamental mechanics of dark rooms that are sort of so well defined, and in a world where we're still debating what consent is, in a world where we have such a hard time understanding each other's borders, and the contract between people in any kind of relationship get really difficult. There is just a very beautiful set of experienced rules and regulations and good advice on how to move through a dark room. And so we really wanted to use the actual sort of the framework that already exists and try to apply that to this virtual experience so that the audience actually do have a safe word. They do have a negotiation with a live performer. They do have certain consent gates, we call them, where you're asked, do you want to continue? And you have the option not to, right? So we try to use the mechanics in a way that is then also, of course, after the fact, once you've experienced dark rooms, you will learn a little bit more about how this is common practice and how these things actually play out in real dark rooms. And hopefully you'll be less scared to explore something unknown. You'll have the courage to try to push yourself somewhere you haven't gone before. And you'll have a deeper insight and empathy towards anyone who goes into the dark. And you won't be as afraid of it anymore, maybe. And that's really what we're hoping for, is that to kind of teach you to a certain extent some of these amazing fundamentals that are in the space.
Actually, in QueerUtopia, I feel some similar things as well that Matt just said. Like in the process of building the narrative, which is incorporated a little bit of the codes of the cruising, like that happens like in bathrooms, for example. And it was very rewarding to have the response that I had from like non-queer, like straight people audiences telling me that they, for the first time, understood like how this worked. and that they could somehow like witness this and somehow just tap into the complexity of the gesture, like how it works and the motivations that people have, and not just only the codes that are there, but the motivations behind the characters that are there present. Like I just had a lot of conversations with people afterwards that they just said that this was their only opportunity to somehow try to understand like what cruising is, how does it happen, and like what is behind it, like for people, and what it represents, not just now, but if we think about like a different generation as well.
I would like to share that I work on a project called Virtual Intimacy, which is a theater project that I work with an Australian company called Act Now with Edwin. And it's a community project that we actually have several workshops. And once we were in Adelaide, and that was pre-COVID and was not VR. But we were in a youth dropping, which a lot of like teenagers come in for this LGBTQ center to gather and to share, and then we ask them about question on virtuality, or how do they find the cyberspace. And then there's one question, one response actually was a bit surprised to me, that they feel it's a safe space to practice. So it totally echo with the question, and because it was never the case for me, because I feel I don't, growing up without internet, and then probably around my high school time, internet's there, and then it's a very different generation kind of thinking. But I just want to echo that we, even without VR, virtual space can be a space for people to try and to try to be who they want to be, and to learn things. But the other thing I want to sort of quickly jump to, when we talk about XR, and when we talk about the word education or educational, I feel it's a dangerous as to talk about the commercial value of a work. And like film and video are super educational, and then people wouldn't ask a film director about their educational purpose, but they somehow, producer and their directors for XR are constantly asked to bring up this value. I mean, now the work that gets made most easily will be educational ones that are good for the society. And I found that a bit like a bit
Problematic.
yeah problematic. Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Well, I have a question. So, because education means also that there should be a positive connotation so that people can learn out of the projects. Did you have any challenges and also ethical consideration that you took into consideration when designing characters or the story of your projects? Is there any traditional framework also you looked up to when designing the avatar or the experience itself? Well, we know Louis did, because he looked. There were interviews of people doing cruising many, many years ago. So there is a kind of educational aspect to it, of like reviving these stories and sharing them with the world. Like, what was the issue and challenges, and were there any ethical considerations when bringing these stories to the public?
Yeah, I would say so. I think the biggest struggle, not struggle, but the complexity of it was to take all of the stories and do this personification in one character. I think this for us was a little bit tricky, because it felt like we were over promising and trying to represent like so many people through this one character. But yeah, I don't know, the process of making this was very like organic. I guess like the stories that I heard, they were so strong, they did touch me like in such a deep way that I don't know, we just like tested out. We did like a few reading of the script with like different queer people from different backgrounds to try to somehow like see what they thought. And it's very funny because the let's say one of the when we were closer to getting the final script, we shared the script with one of the people that I interviewed, and that I would say is like the biggest inspiration for the character. And when it comes to ethical question, nothing arise. But then he said, I think this character is still too sad. Like he needs to be more cheerful. And I think that changed a little bit the perspective of what we were doing, because it was like, I understand that you're portraying another person, but at the same time, like the joy that I have about, I don't know, being a survivor, being here, doing all this, like it should be more present. I would like you to make this a little bit more cheerful, like in the process of making it.
Matt, I know that there were a lot of ethical consideration when doing dark rooms, because we discussed it during the one-to-one meeting with Kate. So can you talk about that and also the challenges? And also there's one more thing that I would like to ask you that I think is also connected, because by mistake, I was looking at New Images 2022 and I saw a early picture, and it was a 360 video initially, right? So why did you also decide to change it? Was it like because there were challenges in portraying it through a 360 video and it was better through a 6 DOF? Like, is it connected?
Yeah, the project has definitely developed a lot through those early stages when it was 360 in a first prototyping we did. I think what was true throughout the process though was that we were very keen on making sure we were representing the participants in the way they wanted to be shown. I mean, we have this tagline that you've heard a lot, I guess, but nothing about us without us. I think we were very aware to always bring them in, but also film them and not to design them, to actually capture them and put them into the space. So we did that with 360 film. We did it with like early volumetric camera setups where there was either one or two cameras that we were using. But when the project grew and we understood that we needed the audience to interact, not only on a consent basis, because that was what the first prototype was doing. It was like a yes or no prototype, and you could nod your head or you could say yes or no. But as we moved into the stories that we were casting, we realized that so many of these consents are not just verbal or with nodding your head. They are more silent or hidden in the fact that you're moving somewhere, or you're picking something up, or you're going down on your knees, or there's a whole sort of new dimension of audience interaction that we needed to include. So we decided to shoot it in 360 volumetric capture in Berlin with this VoluCap studio. So we have them represented, and we also scanned them as 3D avatars, so we could later do mocap with them. Some of that was then done with mocap actors to represent childhood memories or other things that they didn't or couldn't do themselves. But yeah, that's been a challenge, because of course you'd have to also combine then a 3D world with this filmed material and create a coherent experience through that. What was the other questions you had?
There were lots of questions.
Yeah.
Ethical consideration and challenging when designing characters, because I think we discussed with Kate a lot about the ethical considerations you've gone through when designing the characters.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really depends on the story, but I think because we are so participant focused, it's a story, really told by them. It's basically like bringing them into the process all the time, right? As an example, Trixie, the puppy player in the experience, loves the experience was seeing the experience and trying it and love themselves in it and could completely see themselves and felt fine representing being represented as such in the experience. But the problem of then having all the other puppies that we had designed, they were taken from humanoid avatars that we then remade in a way so we could create different colors that were color coded and different sort of styles of their heads. But of course we couldn't do like a full scan of all the puppies in the community for Trixie's community. But that became a real issue because like they suddenly also became very quite homogenous, and they aren't that homogenous. And so Trixie felt, we just had discussions about like, well, how do we make sure we create diversity that actually represents this community that she suddenly is now, it's not me as a creator, but it's she who has to be the ambassador for this for these puppy humanoids that we created, or these avatars. So that's an ongoing discussion on all the levels of darkrooms, is like to keep bringing in the participants in a way that they feel comfortable throughout, all the way to the final cut of the experience.
I want to join and follow up the diversity part, because for In the Mist, which was filmed in 2020, and all the time until now, people always ask me where and how did I find the performers, and the other question would be, do you purposely want them to look this way or that way? And then, in fact, if some of you have seen the film, I mean, they are all quite to a standard, like aesthetically, macho and build and fit. And at the beginning, I was more imagine a more wide range of variety, but it's not easy to find people who are comfortable with their body and then want to be filmed in this way. So in the end, only until the last day, I found a elder member to film. And the other thing I think about building a character, what's interesting about my project is these two projects, they are non-really story-based and they are non-documentary. And I always want to emphasize when I have chance to talk to the audience who saw the film, or actually talk to the team who is introducing the film, like Kaohsiung Film Archive, and I will always share with them that this is not a representation of a real sauna. This is, even though it's filmed, if it's just a realistic one. I mean, I will even tell them, it's darker. You can possibly film with the sensor of the camera. And then and then back to the ethical question. Finally, it's like I got a lot of really like positive feedback, like enormous, generous, positive feedback showing the film. But there are also questions, like very basic questions, like I don't even have the answer. There will be questions like, are these space legal? So it's not even ethical. Like actually, to what degree the thing or the space or the action I was filming or I was designing, to what extent it is ethical. And I don't even know that. I was so yeah, I think that's a very broad response to this question. Yeah.
But Mads, sorry for
interrupting. I wanted to ask you something.
Okay. No, because Mads mentioned the thing that they decided to go for interaction, actually to help with the concept. But I admitted in this moment that's actually something that complicates my concept. The idea of having to interact is where I actually find myself in a very uneasy spot. Like this was part of the things we discussed with Federico, and it's not a critique to the work, it's just a broad reflection on it. So I don't have any problems talking about some topics or watching some topics, but the moment in which you ask me, okay, do this, you're inside this experience, interact with this object, interact with another person that's sharing the experience with me, that's where I feel a bit like, okay, you're getting inside my intimate sphere. Why are you doing that? I don't like it. I know that it doesn't sound nice, and maybe, probably it's just me that has this kind of response to this. But it was an issue that I kind of perceived, the idea of having to interact and embody maybe a situation, because VR is like the epitome of intimacy, and the idea of having to embody something that's not part of my own intimacy felt a bit challenging to me, because it's not like you're challenging my prejudices or biases. You're challenging my level of intimacy, my perception of my sexual sphere, and yeah, that's something that, as I said, it's not a critique, but it's something that I would maybe, for other experiences, I would stop a lot to consider on the audience side.
I totally agree, and I think, but I think you're also kind of proving the point of dark rooms, because I think that is the main reason why it has to be a virtual reality experience, because it really is challenging your intimate sphere, and that is the purpose, is to see where your intimate sphere is and where it feels good or fun or weird or uncomfortable. And some of the feedback we've gotten that I love the most is, for example, in the first act, we have a scene where you're placed as a voyeur, and you oversee Anjay's first darkroom experience, which is the first character we meet. And some of the feedback there was that some people felt shy, and they felt like they were invading someone else's privacy. They felt like they shouldn't be there, that they had these emotions that you have when you step into these spaces that are challenging your intimate, your sexuality, and also are sort of fundamentally about things that are a little bit intimate and private. So I think that's, and because on the other hand, there's audiences that would also say, wow, that was so hot to be there in the toilet booth and looking through this, and seeing that, and I didn't know that would make me feel so hot, so that. And I think both of those are valuable experiences to bring from the experience.
I absolutely agree on the fact that everybody has a different reaction to this, and that it's a very interesting goal. I see why you're doing this. At the same time, how can I say it? It doesn't feel welcome to me to have this kind of invasion. I'm making example. I go on the practical side. Sorry for talking so long, but when you onboard on an experience, if they do the onboard well, because sometimes at festival we ask, well, what is the experience about? And they don't even know what it is about. So let's pretend that there is a very good onboarding on this. And they tell you, okay, this experience is very violent. There's blood everywhere. There's a dog dying. And I feel comfortable in saying, okay, maybe it's not my kind of work. Okay, so I refuse to watch it. And that's acceptable, okay? That's mostly acceptable. But I've seen cases of people like going out with friends, or not friends, but going out with people they don't know very well. And there's like a lot of sex talk about, oh, I did that, or I did that, the sex jokes and everything. And I saw people getting very awkward and embarrassed about this, with the problem that they cannot tell anybody that they are embarrassed about this, because there's like a strong social pressure on sexuality, on being sexual creatures. And I'm not just talking about asexual persons, I'm talking about persons that live sexuality in a more intimate way or in different ways than this. So this kind of audience would find it very hard to actually deny their consent in an experience like this, because I think they would feel judged if they did it. Because it's not violence, it's not pain, it's not someone dying or a timer. It's like sex. It should be normal. Everybody should feel at ease with it. If you don't, you're too traditional, or maybe you've got a psychological problem. And that's, I know it's a limited audience, but we are in a niche. So yeah, that's why I'm wondering.
If I can just shortly comment on this, I totally agree with you that there is a real issue with, and especially in a virtual space where you're being overwhelmed by all the things that are happening. And I know from experience that an audience that are immersed are very manipulative. Like it's not manipulative, they're easy to manipulate. And so there is a very, very fine line that you have to walk when designing these spaces. But I do want to say that from experience, this goes back to when we did Doom Room in 2018 and the Doghouse and similar projects. We did trigger warnings as a first thing, which we will always do. So to make sure the audience knows what are they stepping into and what do they already know they have triggers on. And secondly, I think a very important thing is what we call the aftercare space.
Okay.
What we called it before, it was called the decompression space or the reflection space, that is always part of the design of the full audience trajectory. So when we look at dark rooms, a fundamental thing about challenging your sexuality is actually to get your boundaries broken a little bit, because you cannot explore a boundary without going a little bit too far. And I think what makes it how you can say a viable thing is because you actually have an after space afterwards. And this is my baby, by the way. Hi. You have a space afterwards to understand what happened, to reflect on what happened, to make sure that everyone is okay with that. And so that's a big part of our experience, is to actually have that aftercare space being facilitated by a performer to talk with the audience and to themselves among each other.
This is very interesting.
I really resonate a lot with the aftercare. I never thought about aftercare, this word, but at least decompress or debrief. And there's an interesting situation, like when the film was showcased in DOK, Leipzig. I can never pronounce that. And then Lars was so nice that before the so there's a lady who took care of the audience coming in, and there were people queuing, and the lady had to talk to every single one for a very long period of time after they finished the film. So then in the end, Lars actually set up a Zoom meeting for me and the lady to actually talk her experience being a caretaker of this experience. So that's something that I echo with Matt. And the other thing actually about breaking the boundary or feeling personally invading someone's space, there is an object which is a torch, a flashlight that you can hold in my work in Traversing the Mist, and then you'll be able to see in the dark. And for me, it's a surrealistic thingy, and then I like it. And then, but actually there's one or two. There are several people actually told me that they can live without, and then some of them really hated the torch. And then I would actually also like to ask Federico and Mats, who have experienced it. Do you feel the torch was invading someone, or because for me that object is like it's for me it's very theatrical, and it's like a object that shouldn't be there. And then there's a response from someone who say that it makes me become the least kind of person I want to be in the real life. But I kind of have a paradox about this, like in the virtual reality where you can somehow try something that you would never be able to do in the real space. And yeah, so some response about this.
I want to comment on that because I find it echoes a very specific thing we're doing in darkrooms, which is also with a flashlight. Most likely, I was inspired by your flash because I love the flashlight in Traversing the Mist. But we're using it a little bit differently, and we have I think a real problem with this concept because the way we're using it is to let the audience pick up the flashlight in the middle of a scene where a main protagonist is lying naked on the floor after being put in a jail cell by white male officers, and she's a black woman. And this is part of her describing the trauma she had from this arrest. And one of the things that she says in the arrest is that she was looked all over her body with a flashlight. And the audience pick up the flashlight before you hear this part of the story. So what we are trying to do, which I'm not sure will work, and I'm curious to hear what you think, is to let the audience actually on purposely feel a little bit shameful about being the ones using this flashlight. And to bring in shame as a storytelling tool is a dangerous field, I know, but it's also such a fundamental part of a human experience. And the audience that will be seeing this will most likely be majority white people. So there will be some resonance in this interaction or this standoff between you and the protagonist. But it is, I think, true that the audience will feel bad about it. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea.
I will watch the work in progress on the 21st. I will see what I'll let you know. But this reminds me of a book I recently read, which is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but there's a game. It's a story about a few game designer and their relationship throughout the years. And then one of the protagonists actually made a game that is called Solutions. And then you can either work very hard to find solution and don't get what context you're working on, or or the other way is that you ask, why am I working on this? And then you will realize that you are actually making, let's say, bombs for the Nazi. And so you will not win, but you will be something. And then, yeah, this reminds me of just echoing or bringing in a shame or like putting a title or label to the audience. It's really risky. And yeah.
About that, there's a question from the public, which is how much pressure do you think the directors have to describe in advance the experiential elements of your projects? How much surprise is allowed beyond informed consent is required, and how informed must that consent be? And that also connects to another question, because two of these projects, well, all of your projects have been exhibited to the public. Mats, yours is a prototype, but Louis and Yan, you showcase all your projects to the public. So how much did you describe the project to the public? How much did you need to let the people know that there was sexual content and also quite explicit? Can you address that? And also if you had any issues in doing that in festivals and public spaces?
We showed QueerUtopia in a few places. In Venice, specifically, when we get the ticket for QueerUtopia, there was like a disclaimer saying it was a plus 18 experience. But this, I didn't feel pressured because, I mean, QueerUtopia is through sexuality, like it's about something that it could be regarded as like a sexual topic, but at the same time it's not as explicit. So like I just didn't feel that the content itself was so triggering to be necessary to do this. When we showed it in Brazil, we actually had an installation during a festival in a museum there, and by chance there was a deactivated bathroom in the museum that we used as part of the experience. So we just created some sort of like installation that people will go through this deactivated bathroom, that we sort of like recreated a little bit the scenes. We have like mannequins inside and some audio and stuff like that. So I think this could be understood as a, I don't know, like a very explicit disclaimer about what they were about to see. But yeah, like we just, yeah, we didn't work. I think we didn't care so much about like in the actual experience, like bringing this up. But we also had like mixed like receptions, specifically in this festival in Brazil, because it was a festival inside of a museum that it had like a different public as well. So some people just ended up there by chance. And I mean, it was a very the experience itself, it's quite political, and the political landscape back then in Brazil, I mean, still is a little bit, was very polarized. So we just had like some very intense negative reactions because people were not expecting it. But at the same time, like if you're doing a project that approach these topics, and in the case of this one, with a, I don't know, a solid positioning, I like, I at least I just feel happy to, you know, cause some discomfort and yeah, give people something that they wouldn't see, they wouldn't look for it. So like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and you had instead quite some issues in showcasing in the mist to the public. Can you elaborate on that?
First of all, there will be like trigger warning disclaimer on the ticket, on the program. And then I personally tend to, I kind of prefer maybe a little bit over addressing it than not talk about it. And when it's invited in our email communication, I will always first I need the audience feel secure and then not seen, and then like there need to be some kind of half transparent or blurred wall, or I mean they cannot always make walls for each of the participant, but this is in our rider requirement. Like, and the other is to always make sure they know what they are about to see. However, very recently it was shown in a university in Taiwan, and then the programmer actually didn't follow the rules. So he told me that he thinks that the audience should actually know what they were about to see. And only if they ask, he will then ask him. And I'm not so sure about this, but sometimes as a filmmaker, when it's distributed, even if you emphasize on that, they even think it's a better way to do it, because a lot of time too much precaution will overkill the work itself. So this is my experience.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very interesting discussion because it talks about the what are the audiences actually that are coming through? How did they decide that this is what they wanted to see? Where is it shown? Who is showing it? For how long, and etc. So there's a lot of parameters here that we have to take into account. But I think, and I would agree with you, Jan, that it's so important to emphasize that the setup and the context of what you're about to see is part of the experience. The ticketing, the PR material, the moment you enter the venue and the first sight you see, the first person you meet, all of this is normally something that I want to design and control to make sure that I know exactly what the audience knows at a given time, and that they feel safe, and that not that they're over-informed, because you also don't want to give away the drama of what is about to happen. But I think that in humans in all in all times have been intrigued by also the things that are things that they don't know, and that will be highly immersive or very participatory in some sense. Like, there are audiences out there that are interested in this, and if you know that you're going to a highly immersive, participatory experience about dark rooms, right? Then it's not really my fault that you are there and you don't like it. It's fine, you can leave, but like, you've gone those steps and you've bought the ticket, which is quite expensive, and you stepped into the theater, and then you're mine, in the theater. And I think that's what we should keep also. Also, we don't want to take away the mysterious, beautiful nature of what we're doing. Like, it's also something that is unseen or unheard of, right? Yeah.
It's also true that you cannot predict how you as a user will react to certain things. Maybe you never realize that there's something in a certain experience that will terrify you to death. It's not the case of your experiences, obviously, but maybe you never realized that was your trigger. And I do think that the trigger is a big word, maybe for this kind of topics, but I think it's important that the audience knows what they're about to see. I don't think it's going to impact their desire to. It's not going to impact their choice to see or not see it in the sense that. For example, stupid example, but I used to read a lot of fan fictions, and fan fiction always have the same base. The tags at the start of the work, they tell you, oh, this work is going to talk about a cabin in the wood where there's only one bed, and the plot is that, and yet you keep reading those fan fiction because you want to know how the topic was developed in that specific work. So I don't think that even if you explain to people what the experience is about, it's going to let them say, oh no, I've already seen this, I don't want to see it again. But it's certainly going to help the people that don't feel comfortable with the topic to avoid it if they really don't want to watch it.
And about that, I have one last question to everyone, because we're more than an hour in this talk. I know it's interesting, and we talk about this for hours and hours. So is there a point where consent or protection becomes an obstacle to necessary provocation? How can artists, thinkers, or activists effectively challenge norms if their audience is shielded by unwillingness to be uncomfortable? What do you think? Agnese, maybe you start on this, because you already started talking with Mats before on this.
Yeah. So I'm no artist, so I have like a certain perception of things. I think that no, but I think that what makes the difference, for me at least, is the fact that you can talk about provocative topics, to challenge norms, dark rooms in the wider sense. Without necessarily looking for the shocking effect, which is not something that any of you do, okay? But it's like when an artist does something to shock people, I don't think it's useful. I don't want to be shocked. That's not going to change my opinion or suddenly fill me with enlightenment about stuff. It's just going to shock me and maybe have the reverse effect. It's going to make me annoyed. I'm going to be angry because I feel attacked. What I think would help with the provocative topics and words is rather humanity. It's like the opposite. I want to understand what's behind the person that's behind something that's not familiar to me. To get a glimpse of the human perspective behind these moments, to kind of go personal rather than, as I was saying in the beginning, rather than talking about the big picture. And I think this is a way to impact the audience in a much more honest way. And, maybe they won't, maybe in the magazines they talk about very shocking experiences and movies and books. They talk about it online. Everyone knows about 50 Shades of Grey or whatever. But I don't think the goal of this experience is even to be on the magazines. It's just to open people up to acceptance. And you can do it one person at a time without having to shock them, but just to make them connect with you. This is my perspective on it, obviously.
Who reacts on this? I know you want to say something, guys.
Okay, Twinlet.
I mean, I totally agree that it has to come from the universal experiences and like the topics and the humanity. I 100% agree with that. But at the same time, I just feel that we as XR creators, we're constantly having to somehow like apologize for, like overdoing something or over causing something. And I'm not really sure if like filmmakers need to do that. I'm not really sure if like writers need to do that. Like my work specifically, it's very inspired by, I don't know, the avant-garde movements of like 60s and 70s. And people were so unapologetic about the medium and everything that they were doing. And I totally agree that shocking just because it's not what we're trying to do. And I mean, will be just like pure shock and entertainment. And I don't think this is what we're trying to achieve. But at the same time, I just feel we need to allow ourselves to be a bit more daring, to like work in these in-betweens and to test a little bit the boundaries. And because I also feel that the humanity of that we were trying to achieve and the messages that we're trying to convey, they somehow operate a little bit in these edges, so
Yeah, and I mean, did you have audience reacting shocked by In the Mist or Traversing the Mist, even if you already told them and made them aware about the content?
I think there was a time, there was a performance actually, and then there were some guests, international curator and guests, they were invited to Taiwan and they were really being brought here and there. So even though we had a like very detailed informational program, somehow some of them didn't read it. So they actually, I thought all of them know it. And then, so I think they start to ask me about what if there are audience who didn't have, who have trauma with male body or something. And then I start to realize, oh, they didn't know what they were about to see. And that was not pleasant, but that happened as well. But I think but I think risk taking has been always, it's not that we are, I think I'm echoing a lot with what Agnes is saying about connection and what Louis is saying about this universal humanity around it, because after all, what I was making was not or was not what I actually want people to see, is actually to see what's behind the action. And yeah.
Mads and Child.
Yeah, sorry, I have my
No
child.
worries, it was beautiful to see.
My child
I would
duty.
never thought that a child would have joined us to talk about darkrooms and sexuality and consent. So I'm very proud of this.
Yeah, he's too young to know what I'm doing yet. But no, I just I think I agree a lot with Louis that we should really be the ones that keep experimenting. We discussed this just before we went live. And for me, experimenting is taking things a little bit further than what is safe, because I think it's in the risk of something being a catastrophe that it can become art.
Nice.
Maybe that's what I could end with saying.
It's a good ending line, if I can say.
100% agree.
That was a beautiful ending line. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. And again, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. So if anyone has questions to the artist, please drop them in the comments, and maybe we can ask them later on and maybe introduce you or something, so we can chat about this. Thank you again for joining, everyone. Thank you for being here and have this conversation, which is much needed, because I guess I would say that the reason why I admire all of you is because you're pushing the boundaries a lot, and we are all thinking what can be XR and what is the boundary of representation, and if there should be a boundary, if not, and how much that should be softened for the audience. So I'm very happy that we had this conversation, because I think we're still defining that, because XR is such a new medium. And even with movies, there was a lot of censorship when there was erotic movies, but even before there were cinemas, like even porn was such a big topic, and it is still a big topic, how it should be monetized and stuff. So the fact that we're talking here and now about it is very important. And so thank you for sharing all your opinions and visions, and also your artistry. Keep doing your work, because it's important. And there will be more LinkedIn lives on this channel, so please keep following. We're not going to talk about sex all the time. We're going to talk about also something else, so be prepared. Yeah, there is actually one in 2 days. So join on LinkedIn, join on YouTube, and yeah, thank you for staying here with us all these 1 hour and 11 minutes.
And 45 seconds.
Yes.
Thank you, Federico. You're a fantastic host.
Thank you, Federico. Gathering us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.